So gonna talk about well today mold tools, always mold tools, and what I think I still hear this music running in the background here. What I wanted to do today was, well, we're gonna talk about mold tools, but I think that there's a little bit more to it than just that. Really, what we have with the mold tools is some different options we can use. So, well, my name is Lars, if you don't know me, and part of the CAD Dimensions technical team here. And any questions or any comments, definitely more than welcome to email me at lars@caddimensions.com. But what I want to try to do today with this mold tools lunch and learn is to not only, I'm going to show how they work and show how you can make a mold, but I know that we have some people here who, some people who have done molds for years and know all ins and outs. So I'm hoping that I'm going to have an opportunity to show you some tips and tricks. And we're also going to have people who are maybe very new to this, and we're going to make sure they get something too. And then, of course, we also at CAD Dimensions, we really appreciate you guys taking time out of your busy day to join us here for lunch. So I also have a little giveaway in the end. So at least make sure you hang around for that. So what we are going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about parting lines, shut off, cores, etc. I also wanted to just introduce design library features. And then in the end, I also wanted to talk a little bit about top-down assemblies. So I'm a mold maker myself of trade, so I have done a couple of these, and maybe just kind of like wanted to give some of my input on how I think that these tools can be used. And again, I think that the mold tools, I think that there is some handy things in there that we might want to use for other things than just molds. So let's put on our work gloves here and dig into it. So very fitting here. We can talk about a plastic part. So the mold tools, they're hiding inside your SOLIDWORKS under Insert Molds, and you kind of like get this list here. And like I said, I've talked to many mold makers and mold designers who never uses these tools, and some of them maybe didn't know that they were there. But they're pretty neat, and there's definitely some uses for them. What we want to end up, of course, is talking about plastic injection molding for plastic parts. But like I said, I think that they can be used for other things too. So let's jump in and kind of like look at a couple of these things. So let me just kind of like introduce the tools first, pretty kind of like the basic step through here. So inside SOLIDWORKS, let's go and open up a part here. And this part here is just a plastic part. It's supposed to be somewhat like a camera case mold. And the mold tools, there's a toolbar for it. You can turn the toolbars on and off up here by right-clicking, and you can turn them on and off. So if you don't see the toolbars, you can definitely right-click and you can turn the mold tools on, and you will see that there is this toolbar here. Now the screenshot that I showed before, was actually the insert mold. So this is where these mold tools exist. But like I said before, it's not necessarily that these tools are just only if you're making plastic injection molds. We can use them for a lot of other things, and that's what I'm kind of like hoping to throw some tips and tricks in there. Some of the things you might want to think about when it comes to molds, some of the things that I think is really cool about SOLIDWORKS, the neat thing about 3D CAD is that the software knows that there's something there, right? What is awesome. So we can actually go in and do something like a draft analysis here. So I'm on that mold toolbar. That is actually also existing other places inside SOLIDWORKS. But draft analysis here, and if I select what we call like a neutral plane, a direction of pull, then it will actually show me what areas needs draft. Because if you're doing a plastic injection mold, you need some draft to be able to get the part out of the mold. So they put a little bit of taper in there. So just out of the gate, SOLIDWORKS gives you, because it knows what is there, it gives you those areas. So you can see here that green is positive draft, yellow needs draft, and then red, is negative draft or the other way, depending on how you kind of like flip the button here. It doesn't really matter much. But what you can do with this draft analysis tool is you can leave it on and you can work with it. So that can be kind of handy. So now you can go in and add draft. Now there is on the mold tools, there's a draft up here, but of course it exists other places too. If you go to your standard feature toolbar, the exact same tool exists in here. SOLIDWORKS puts it different places. So what we can do is we can go in here, we can add some draft, and again it comes from a neutral plane. And so if I select this top of this feature here, I can now go down and apply some draft to this part here. So we can go in and select all the faces that we want the draft to reside on. And if you just want to test it, you can just hit the green check mark and you will see that now there's some draft on here, and the yellow ones don't have draft. We can just go in and open it up again and continue. And you will actually see that the geometry does change. So that's one of the things to know about this draft tool is it will physically change the model here. I'll show you again when we're done picking these different sides here. So that's just one of the things to be aware of, that the draft tool actually physically does change the part, right? So if I zoom in here, you can kind of see the draft, and as soon as if I roll on top of it, you will see that the shape becomes straight, right? So that's one of the things to know, that's a neat tool in there. Very quickly, we can apply draft to our part. Now we go back to this mold tab, mold tools here. We can then turn it on and off. If we're done seeing it, we can turn it on and off with the draft analysis. And one of the other things we might want to do is we might need to change the models. This is the finished model, right, that we're going to end up getting out of the mold. So one of the things that you run into with molds is that there's some kind of a shrink factor in the plastic. So many times you have to make the part a little bit bigger. So in SOLIDWORKS we use the scale tool here. If I click on the scale tool, you get different options of what you can scale about, in this case centroid. And the way it works is that 1 is 0. And so if you wanted to increase this by 1%, it will be 1.01. And that will actually change the part. And now the part actually grew. It would be kind of hard to see with doing 1%. But if we did something unrealistic, like 10% maybe, you will see that when I hit the green check mark, that the part grows up, right? So that's, again, one of these other things to be aware of that you might need to do. So anybody who've done molds before, they may be probably already familiar with this. Anybody who's never done molds before, that's one of the things that you need to make sure you get a hang of. Now, when you've done this is kind of like I call it the standard tools. Then we can get into these mold tools that are sitting over here on this toolbar, or again, insert molds if you're working with them in here. So the first thing we're looking at is we're looking at a parting line. So this is where the part's gonna kind of like the mold's gonna split. And you click on the parting line, and again, anytime inside SOLIDWORKS you have one of these yellow boxes, that's when it tells you what it's looking for. You can also, of course, hit the question mark up here. So I can select some kind of a direction of pull on this thing here. I can select an edge and hit the draft analysis, and when I do that, SOLIDWORKS actually automatically select all the edges at that split level. Now, if I didn't want these edges, you could just, if you don't get the right ones, you can just delete them right out of here, and you can select them yourself. If I select the edge here, I can actually either walk around the part just by selecting the edges here that I wanted to walk around. Kind of like see the little red arrow here that's kind of like following around the part. You could also select over here to the left. You can actually also go forward that way, and you can actually also hit this little propagate here, and it can go all the way around. But really, that's what it's selecting there, is that line around. And again, this is fairly basic, pretty easy part. You can also in here use split sketches. So if you created some kind of a sketch, you could split it. And I'm actually going to come back with this tool and show another part, because there's some neat functions with this parting line. But what it really does is it just kind of like creates an edge, a blue edge around the part that says, all right, this is where I'm going to split the tool. And I'm kind of like just working from my left to the right here. So the next thing is a shot of surfaces. So this is where a mold collapses. If there's any hole through the mold, like you see here, we got to kind of like create some shot of surfaces. Now this is very neat. If you're looking over in my tree over here, you will see that I have solid bodies turned on. So we have one solid body. That's our model, right? Now as soon as we're going to create these shot of surfaces here, SOLIDWORKS will actually detect these surfaces, and what it's trying to do is it's trying to close them off. And it comes in a couple of different flavors. There's a contact, which means that it's just kind of like trying to put a flat blanket over the hole. You can also go into a tangent mode, and now it's trying to look at the edges around it and see how it will be tangent with it. And then you could actually also choose not to fill them if you don't want to. I'm going to leave this as contact right now, but what happens is that SOLIDWORKS actually tells me now that the mold can be separated because I've locked off these two openings. And here comes the magic. Suddenly, I have two surfaces over here as soon as I create the shot of surfaces. And let me show you what these are. If I go into my solid body and just hide it for a second, everything still looks pretty normal in here. But what these two surfaces is kind of like an upper shell and a lower shell around our solid model. So it kind of like laid a blanket around it. So let me just go ahead and hide one of the shot of surfaces here, and you can kind of like see that that's kind of like the outer boundary around my part. And if I turn that one off, the core end of it, and turn on the other one, you can kind of like see that that's the inside of it, right? You can kind of like see how it has the lip in there. So that's the inside of it. So that's what SOLIDWORKS does when it creates these molds, is it actually creates surfaces. Now, it doesn't mean that you have to be a surfacing specialist to be able to do these kind of things. But having some surfacing knowledge is probably a good thing if you got to work with these with molds. It's good to have some surface knowledge. And one of the things to remember about surfaces, the surfaces is just a single wall, flat thing. You kind of like gives you an opportunity to create each face at the time. And just to pause for a second, you know, if you don't feel too comfortable with surfaces, if you've never used surfaces, well, you know, us at CAD Dimensions are trying to give you these resources, and these resources are available to you. If you went online, and for example, went to YouTube, all you would have to do is type in CAD Dimensions, and then you could type in surfacing, just straight from YouTube, and you will see that we have lunch and learns, previous lunch and learns out here on these things. So one of the things is surfacing is the next step. So this is a beginner stage. So just remember that you know, CAD Dimensions, we have these videos out on your YouTube channel. Just type in YouTube and go out and search CAD Dimensions and whatever you look for, and there's a chance that you will find exactly what you're looking for. But so what SOLIDWORKS does is just lay these surfaces around our part. Now, with that done, with the shot of surfaces done here, we can see down in this feature tree, we have the shot of surfaces. The next one here is the parting surface. And what a parting surface is SOLIDWORKS says, all right, now I have the kind of like a shell, two surfaces that's kind of like shells the mold. Now I need to have a surface that I can cut through the mold with. So we're going to press this parting surface, and it comes with some different options up here. Now again, yellow box tells what it's looking for, and you have the question mark. But it picks that parting line we created first. And you can do it normal to surface, what you would like to see here, if I make it a little bit bigger. It kind of like follows the surface versus perpendicular to pull, where it now kind of like becomes a flat surface. Now, the size of this really doesn't matter. Bigger is better, because all we're trying to do with the surface is we're trying to make the surface so big that we can use it as a cutting plane for cutting our mold. So I'm just going to hit OK here, and now you will see that I actually end up with 3 folders, and that's what the mold tools are using inside SOLIDWORKS, free surfacing folders, cavity, core, and now we have this parting surface. So if I turned off those 2 outer shells we saw before, you will see that the parting surface is the flat surface, doesn't do anything other than just kind of like tells the SOLIDWORKS that this is where I want to cut the mold. So with these on, just the surfaces on here, I can actually now go ahead to the next one, what is the tooling split. Now the tooling split is now where we're actually going to create what the mold cavity is going to look like. So when I hit that one, SOLIDWORKS is going to ask me to actually sketch the mold. So I'm going to click on this face here, and I'm now in my standard sketching command. And if you're anything like me, you're using the S key. And remember, this one can completely be customized, right? Whatever you want. If you right-click on the S key, you can customize it. You can pull things on and off if you want it on or not. So on the S key, I'm just going to hit a center rectangle. And I'm going to go in here and I'm just going to put some dimensions in. And if you wonder how I can just type in my dimensions like this without having to use a smart dimension tool, that's an option and that you can turn on and off, and I can, if you email me, I'll definitely show you that. Another option there, we'll go out to YouTube, type in CAD dimensions options, and you will get a luncheon right on that. So what I have now is I just have this 2D sketch sitting right on that plane, and when I exit out of it, SOLIDWORKS automatically is going to go into the tooling split command. What that tooling split command does is it takes our core surface, our cavity surface, and our parting surface and put it in the respective different boxes, and then it creates kind of like this box around our part that we can kind of like see on the screen. And of course the idea is that this box is big enough to cover our core and cavity and also wide enough. Now it has to be within that parting surface, so that's why making it bigger is better. And then you hit the green check mark, and guess what? Now we just made a mold. If I go in here and I turn these surfaces off, just hide them for a second, you will see in my solid bodies I actually have 3 different solids now. So that was our part, there's our tooling split 1, what is the top one, and tooling split bottom, what is the bottom one. Now if you want to move these apart, there is the move copy tool inside SOLIDWORKS, and if you're like me, you don't remember where they are, you can always go in and search for them. Just type in move up here in the search command, and that gets activated, and now we could actually kind of like move this part up out of the way a little bit, and we maybe now get to see our mold in here. So that is a quick way to kind of like create a mold. This recording is also getting recorded, so if you feel like you missed a step, you can always, you know, get the recording here. Email me at lars@catdimensions.com, and you can kind of like go through it and kind of like get these 20-minute steps or 10-minute steps we just created. But that's really the basics of creating a using the mold tools the way that they're kind of like set up inside SOLIDWORKS. Now, that doesn't mean that that's exactly how I maybe would use the mold tools, and I'm going to show that in the end. So if you have already built some of these molds and maybe found some of the restrictions with using this technique, multi-cavities and stuff like that, I'll show you how I maybe get around that. But I think it's important to understand that this is how these tools work. So let me show you another. So remember when I did that parting line in the beginning? That was kind of like the first command we did. There is actually some neat tools with that one. So let me just show you another example where that could be used. So I have this cradle here, phone cradle, and if you look at this, it is an imported model, blank like this. Then we did a little free form on it, pulled up, made a little bump on it, and then a couple of cuts and openings here. Now, if you look at this one and you're saying, all right, so this is the part you're getting, you got to create a mold for. How do you create a mold for this? Because there's really not any good cutting lines on this part. If I just cut it way through, I will run into some issues because these sides are development. Let me show you. If I go in and do a draft analysis on this tool, you will see that we actually have these Well, we sometimes call it straddle faces, where, you know, if we place the line up here, it will be hard to create this environment here. So what SOLIDWORKS have given us in the parting line tool is, if I go in here and I should say the top again, and I just say draft analysis, you will see that it didn't pick up any of the edges, and it made it blue because it's straddling faces. But there is this tool, this checkbox over here called split faces. Now check this one out. When you hit this one, SOLIDWORKS is going to go in and analyze this part, and you can see that it's actually changing this blue and finds out where the development is for this to split. Okay, so that's pretty neat that SOLIDWORKS actually has that technology, that SOLIDWORKS, again, because it's a 3D modeling software that knows where things are, it can actually see that, you know, for this to slip in and out the mold, this will be where the parting line for this mold will be. And now all I have to do is to go in and select it. So I can go in and select it, and again, just like I did before, I can go kind of like select each edge individually. I can also select over here to the left and kind of like go step by step, or I can actually ask it to try to propagate it, and it goes all the way around. So now I have actually just split these faces, and that's really all I've done at this point. I've just split the faces on this part here and created those two surfaces that's kind of like roaming around the part. Now, with that, I split the solid faces. I still kind of like have to break the model into two pieces, because if you got to make a mold for this, it would need to be two cavities and two cores. So what I would have to do was I would have to go in and kind of like create a way to break this model into two pieces. And this is where maybe some of these surfacing commands could be handy to use. One of the tools that it has that is really neat, let me turn off the solid and maybe turn on our surfaces just so we kind of like seeing these surface shells. One of the tools that is very nice is the fill surface. And the fill surface also exists on your surfacing toolbar. What the fill surface does is you're giving it some closed edges, and normally less. I think you can do it on 3, 5, 6, 7, 8. You don't want to do it on 4. Then you probably want to do something like a boundary surface. But what I can do is if I select these edges here, so I'm going to right-click. Don't forget when you right-click inside SOLIDWORKS that it gives you different options to select, quick select. So I can select one way here if that works. We can select open loops around there. And what it will do is it will create kind of like a blanket of a surface development on that parting line that we created. So you can kind of like see a blanket that it lays on that edge. And that surface will now sit down here. It's actually sitting right here, the surface fill. And if I just hide my two other surfaces, you will see that that is now just a surface that is just following that parting line we created. Now, this surface here, I can use that to actually cut my solid with. So now it's still sitting in there. That surface is sitting in there. I can pick it through the hole. So what I can do now is I can use another tool inside SOLIDWORKS that is under the Insert Features, and it's called Split. So I'm showing you a lot of advanced tools here today. This Split tool here is actually pretty neat. If you go in here, it's going to ask me, just because it's multi-body part, it's going to ask me just to select a couple of templates here because that's what I've set up in SOLIDWORKS. But what this Split tool does is you can use sketches, surfaces, planes, and all the things, and you can cut parts with. So if I select that surface fill surface and say cut part, you will actually see it's going to cut the part into two separate entities. So I can just check them off here, and I now have, let me hide the surface fill for a second, I now have two bodies of this of this solid. Okay, so I just cut the part in half with that fill surface tool. And now with that done, I could continue where we left off before and say, all right, so I cut the part where it's going to come out of the mold. Again, we can check it again if we go into draft analysis and we select the top plane here. We can see that we do have, we can get it out of the mold now. So what we can do is we can go ahead. We already created the parting line, right? We don't need any shot of surfaces on this part specifically because there's no holes in through this one. The parting surface, again, it's going to look a little strange because that again is going to be that that parting line we created. I'm going to actually select it manually again, so I can go through here, select that parting surface around. Now, and like I said before, bigger is better, so I can make that surface. Now, this parting surface does have that perpendicular pull, so you can see how that kind of like becomes bigger. And now I could create the last tooling split here by opening up a sketch on any of these planes. And maybe here I'm just going to sketch a corner rectangle here. Again, just going to make sure that it covers the part. So I'm going to fix this here. So it covers the part and stays within the surface here. And then again, I really get a interlocking surface here, or a mold here created out of this. And again, let me hide my surfaces, and then we can use that move feature again. By the way, if you don't know where things are, right, you can always go up here and hit the little eyeglasses and it will show where it is. It is actually under the insert, insert surfacing is also under insert features. They put them in around. So I can move this part here, and we can now see that we now have that mold for that part. I forgot to actually scale this, so we would not have our shrink factor. But kind of like, again, these tools, this parting line tool actually have some pretty neat functions. So that's kind of like how you work your way through these steps of this, and it's all again is using surfaces in here. Now, I wanted to take it kind of like a little bit further because, like I said, I know that some people have never touched molds before and just right now being introduced to some of these tools. And some people have used molds a little bit longer. So I thought I would kind of like dig into maybe a little bit different part and kind of like show how you maybe could do some of these things here. So really, what we have here, and I don't remember my PowerPoint here. So we kind of like had these parting lines, shallow surfaces we just covered, but we can do more with it. So let's dig it into. Let me show you a little bit deeper on how you possibly could do a mold like this. So what I have here is I have a file, and I can send you all these files too, and the video is going to be uploaded to our YouTube channel. But what I actually have here is I have a file that just have some already constrained planes I'm going to use. Some of these things could actually be standardized for a lot of your tooling if you want to, like side core profiles, sketches, and stuff like that. But what I want to do is I want to import an IGES file. And SOLIDWORKS also have an import tool that this might be new to some people. Right down here, imported. That would actually let you import what we call dumb solids. So besides the standard open file open dialog, there's actually also an import here. So what I'm going to open is a IGES file, good old IGES. So this is what we call a dumb solid. Now this part here, when we open it up, I'm just going to move it above my planes here, drag and drop. You know, this can be the case for some people that you get a model like this and you now got to create the mold around it. And again, it's really neat with SOLIDWORKS that you have some of these tools handy. So again, if I'm going to do a draft analysis on this part here, we can look here and see, first of all, we get live on what is not have the right degrees. But if I go down to 1 degrees, we can actually see that we're going to have some issues in here. There's no draft on these side walls. We have some fill that's already there. Don't forget that SOLIDWORKS really does a nice job working with imported geometry. So if you do see a lot of imported geometry, SOLIDWORKS does have some really nice tools you can use for that. I'm going to go back to my favorite here, the YouTube channel. Type in CAD dimensions and type in dumb solids, what we call imported models, and you will see that we also have a lunch and learn for that. The dumb solids make them your friend SOLIDWORKS. So again, be aware of that we have these different lunch and learns available. So if you haven't seen them, if you're struggling with some of these things, there might be options there. So actually what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use the delete face tool. Now if you didn't sit through the dumb solid, there's 3 different options for deleting imported geometry, and the delete and patch is very neat. What it really does is if you select certain faces, SOLIDWORKS doesn't care about how complicated the faces you're deleting is. All it does is it says, all right, if I'm removing these selected faces, can I merge everything together? So by selecting all these fillets, SOLIDWORKS can see that, yep, if I delete those fillets, I can still merge everything together. So it's just a quick little trick on how you can do that. And now with those fillets out, I can now go in and add that draft, just like we did before on the first part. I can go in here and can select the different faces that I want the draft on, and hit the green check mark, and we can see that that draft have been added. And if I want to add those fillets on, I can use my S key again, hit the fillet, and I'm lazy, so you'll see that I don't spend my part around a lot. I just select right through the edges here, because that's one of the neat things about SOLIDWORKS, that you can actually select through geometry, right? And by the way, with the full preview on inside fillets, if you don't see the fillet actually appears with full preview, it means it's not going to solve. So in this case here, my fillets are way too big. Let me make them a little bit smaller, and you will see that immediately they appear. That's just another little trick. So inside of SOLIDWORKS here, even though there's more complicated parts and imported model, we can take use of something like draft analysis. Another thing we might want to look at here is undercut analysis. So that tool is in here too, and what that can really be handy for is to find out where you're going to need lifters and cores and stuff like that. So I'm going to have an issue over here. I'm going to have to create a couple of cores here and a lifter over here in this part. So this is another thing that is really neat, that it gives us these options. All right, so this part here is pretty much ready now with these couple of adjustments here to get going on. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to do the same thing. Well, we might want to scale the part, right, make it a little bit bigger for our shrinkage of our plastic, so we can add that one in there too. And I'm going to use the parting tool over here. I'm going to do like I did before. I'm just going to go and select the front plane, and I'm going to use my draft analysis. Again, it picks the right edge in this case here. That is where my parting line is going to come from. Shut off surfaces here, when I select that one, you will see that it selects one edge, but this one it didn't select, and it tells me over here that the mold can still not be separated. So I know I have some work to do. So I'm going to go in here and select this edge, and again, I actually can work my way through here and select the different edges that I need to select here. I can also do that over here on the toolbar. So this gives me an option to actually select around the edges where I want the shut off to be, where we have any open area here. So I'm just going to, whoops, I'm going to make the arrow go the wrong way. That's not cool. Undo. And let's go to the next one and put that one there. And as soon as I do that, you will see I kind of like get a yellowish color here. Now this is not what I want. This is contact, and kind of like you see how it bulbs up here. Again, the surfacing tools, I can actually go ahead and change it to tangent, and now it's better. So I can create those. I now have my two shell surfaces around the part. And now I'm ready to go in and use the parting surface. Now, what is interesting about this part here is if I just hide my solid part, let me hide the shot off surface. This shell surface here, I could actually use this edge as a parting surface for this mold insert. So, and that's what I want to do, of course. So again, being a little bit familiar with the surfacing tools can be really helpful. What I can do is I can create my own, because it's using the surfaces. So I can select the surface and I can say I want to untrim it, and SOLIDWORKS kind of like adds on to it, and you can control that right here, how much you want. I'm just going to add some extra on here. Hit the green check mark, and now you will see that when I untrim it, that it kind of like overlaps. You can see that here. So I might want to use the trim surface tool. Now the trim surface tool is really neat. What I can do is I can use, well, I have that parting line going around here, and trim surface, see here, keep selection. So I'm just going to select what I want to keep and hit that, select that, and maybe, and I think maybe GoToMeeting is interfering with our webinar here. Well, that would not be good. Well, that's typical. There's always going to be something, right? Let's see here. Yeah. The GoToMeeting is stalled. Oh no. Technical difficulties. Just give me a second here. See if I can get it fired back up. I'm sorry about that. This is where I should start singing or something like that, right? See how good Lars is on his feet here. Why is this not working the way I want it to work? All right. Well, that's interesting. Seems like we have a little issues. Thank you for bearing with me here. Sometimes these things are not always cooperating. I just want to say, are we back? Are we back again? It looks like we're back. All right, I'm gonna continue. Somebody yell if we're not back, if you can't see what I'm doing. So what I just did was we trimmed that new surface, this surface trim. We trimmed that back with that there. So now they're not overlapping each other anymore. And I showed you before how I had some different folders in here with different geometries. So they were kind of like created ahead of time. But if you go in here and look at this sketch here, it's kind of like a shot-off profile. Let me just go ahead and open up the sketch itself. Really all what it is just a sketch that falls within that parameter. And now I could actually use that to trim that other surface. So if I select that and I say untrim surface, again, I can choose what I want to keep. What's going to be this one here. Now, this surface trim that you see me create, that is actually what is in the parting surface, but I just created my own. I know this might get a little complicated now, but I just created this my own. So don't go in the parting surfaces folder by itself. So I actually kind of like have to drag it in there, just drag it in so it sits inside of that folder. Because the next thing I want to do is I want to do that tooling split, right? That tooling split there. So we create our own parting surface. Now we want to use the tooling split. And I actually have that drawn up in a sketch too. So that's just a pretty standard couple of radiuses here. And I'm just going to use that tooling split. Now what I give you here is there we have the different parts here. I'm going to make this one a little smaller. What we have here that I want to show you is that we also have an interlock surface. So if you, in this case, as this shot of surface is in a bow, we can actually use an interlock and create that right inside of the part here. So what you will see with this tooling split is that it is a little bit more advanced up to this point. Let me shut off my surfaces. And you know what, that move tool, I'm using that too much. Let me just drag it right over on the menu, right? That's how you can do it from over here. You can drag them over. When you get sick of searching for things, you put them on a toolbar. Now we have that. Now we have that there. So that is really cool. Very quickly we can create the core and the cavity with this. And this could be kind of like my intention for this is kind of like an insert here. Now we still have to work with this. So this is where I want to show you some of these advanced tools that I think you might want to learn. Like, first of all, the design library. Let me show you that for a second, and I'll give you these if you want to. I actually have a couple of mold design library parts over here that I can use. So let me show you first the sprue runner here. What I'm going to do, if you're not familiar with design libraries, check this out. I'm going to drag this over on this face, and this little pop-up window comes up here, and it's looking for a point. Now the way this is set up is just to use the origin on our parts, and then it's looking for the plane that's going to cut right through the sprue. In my case, here's the top plane. But check out what it does. It actually creates that sprue right there. Just one feature set in there, and you can completely control these library features. So if you're not using these and you're using molds, you might be missing out a little bit, because these library features can be a very quick way to insert things like that, like this runner with the injection in there. Again, I'll be more than happy to email you this little design library so you can put them over and you can play around with them yourself. And again, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but if you go out here and you type in design library, guess what? That also exists as a lunch and learn that you can check out if you want to learn how to create these yourself. So we do create these, and they are recorded so you can use them. Now, this being open here, what I'm actually going to do, I'm going to show you another of my favorite mold tools. Let me just shut off the top one here, and that is the core function up here. This can be really handy for other things than just molds too. Well, how this works is actually pretty simple, but it's pretty powerful. I have a sketch. Get over the sketch here. It's just a sketch. There's some symmetry on it here, but it's just a standard sketch. And what SOLIDWORKS will do with this sketch is that it will go in, and it will, that sketch right now is sitting right through where we're going to need those sliders to come in there from the side. And what I'm going to have to do is I'm just going to have to attach these to my existing geometry. So I'm going to create a relationship here for them. So let's just go in here and take a look at these. Actually, I didn't want it. There they are. And then what we can do is we're going to have to go and open them up here. Hang on, I have to move all this above my folders. I'm going to move my sketch below. That was probably maybe even easier. That one up there, so I can actually see my geometry when I go and edit the sketch. So when I go and edit the sketch here, you should be able to see it. Now what I can do is I can create a relationship between what I need in here for the slider over here, with the column here. And what this core tool will do is it will actually, if I select that sketch and hit the core, it knows the sketch, it knows that it's going to create these cores out of here, and then it's just looking for a dimension that is going to extrude out per side of that sketch, and if I select the part I want to cut, then it actually cuts these parts out. These parts are literally multi-body parts. They are core. I can actually move these out here, and you can take a look at what it did. It actually created those cores right from that geometry where that sketch was intersecting with the solid. So just like this, I've actually been able to create a slider that can come in and out, so these parts can come out of there. So that's very quick to do that, right? Let me show you another one. I can actually do it on the lifter. So what I have is this lifter over here, and all I have is I have a plane that cuts right through where that lifter is. If you create that and you open up a sketch on that plane, let me just go in again and use this here. I can actually go in and use, now I can use something like convert entities, and I can select these two entities. Oh, I want to look at the other one too. And now I could use like my standard sketch tool to go in and sketch something. Something that looks like this here. See how good I am at creating lifters. So it's going to come over there, and I'm just going to drag this one up. So this is pretty simple sketching, right? I think that most people can handle this. Let me give it a couple of dimensions. This is going to be 6. This is going to be 6. And then I just want to control the angle on these two. All right? So it's a sketch that is just kind of like cutting right through the part here. If I turn it onto shaded with the edges, see the sketch? It's just cutting the center of where I want that lifter to be. And I don't even have to fully define the sketch, but it's not a good thing. But if I go in and make a core, same thing. From that sketch, how far do you want it to go from each side, and what do you want it to cut into? And just like that, it creates that core right there. And now I actually have a core, or a lifter, sorry, that I can now work with for that. Of course, it has to go in an angle into this part, not just straight up. But I think you get the idea, right? So now you can very quickly use that tool. That's definitely a tool that if you're doing molds with cores and lifters that you might find helpful. Now we're running up on the clock here. We still have to do a giveaway. So what I want to show, the last thing I want to show is, so you can create these inserts, or you can create things inside of a part level. But what about an assembly level? And this is probably where most people kind of like get to at some point when they're designing molds. Now, I'm not going to compete with some of you guys. Some of you guys have done molds longer than I have. But here's one of the ways that you could do this in the way that I used to do it. So let me open up a assembly file I have here. Now, all there really is in this assembly is 2 sketches. It's a front view and a side view. And what we're going to use is we're going to use top-down assembling to do this. Now, you can, of course, download all these components. If you go to like something like 3D Content Central, you could go out to something like Haskell's website or something like that. You can actually download all the components. This is the way that I used to do it. So I'm inside an assembly that just had these 2 layout sketches of kind of like my mold base, how I want it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert our new component. What is our part here? And I'm just going to throw it right in on the origin. Okay, so there is the insert we just created. And you could go ahead here, if you are going to create more than one of these, you might want to use something like mirror components inside of SOLIDWORKS. You can actually mirror this component across here. And don't forget that you can reorient the components so you actually get them to look the way they are supposed to. So this is kind of like, that's easy enough. But where this top-down assembling might become handy is that now I can actually use these sketches to kind of like create my mold base around that. So the way you do that with top-down assembling, it's part of our advanced assembly class, is you go in and say, instead of inserting a component, you say insert a new part. Now when you do that, you're going to have to select a new part template. In my case here, I'm actually working in metric. So let's just select the metric area, and it inserts a part that actually has nothing in it. You can rename the part, right-click, rename, and I might want to name this the core, because this is going to be my core side. And what I can do now is I can edit this part right inside this assembly, because this part actually right now only resides inside the assembly. It's not outside. We can get it out there, but right now it's just inside the assembly. By clicking Edit Part, and you'll see that everything turns blue, and now all the tools that you're used to use inside of a part is now available right inside this assembly. So I can start a new sketch in the top plane, and we can go normal to here. And now all I'm going to do is I'm going to use these sketches as references. So now I can go in and say, all right, I'm going to create this core side here, and I'm just going to steal these surroundings here. That's all really I want to do. And then I can say that I want to go and extrude it. And again, standard extruding command, so I can do kind of like a mid-plane here, and I can do it up to what my other sketch kind of like shows here, and I now kind of like get this base here. Now this is, let me just turn off these two sketches we're using here, reference sketches. Now this is just a little solid part, and if I went in and I hid our cavity side of this, you'll see that they're kind of like just embedded in there. There's not a cutout for them, but there you can use another tool that is in the features command called cavity tool. So that will actually let me select these two cores right here, and will let me cut those right out of this block here. And now if I go in and I hide the bezel here, you will see that it leaves me with that. I should also select the core components, of course, should also have been part of that. Could have been part of that. Let's go and see here. They actually might be just separate bodies here. Add those out of there. So that's a way that you can kind of like make an opening. Now the reason that this is so attractive is that we actually, it's now everything changes. So if I change the size of the inserts, this will update. Or if I decided later on to go in and work with my inserts, so if we went back here and turned on this cavity again, we might choose that it's time to put in some injector pins. I can actually go in and do that. So let me just go ahead and select the sketch here, and if I blew a hole through this part here, that is going to be my injector pin. I cut it the right way. Right, if I add in an ejector pin to this hole, to this part here, and I could actually use, I actually have those as points also. See, so I can place the points where I want the injector pins, and now you can use standard commands like sketch-driven patterns. So by selecting this here, I can actually input all my injector holes. That was easy, right? So now if I go back to my assembly, you will see that the assembly is going to update with these holes. Now, this is going to be kind of interesting. You will actually see that now they're all showing up because we used that cavity tool in there, that now they actually all show up as studs. But not to panic, we can very quickly turn them into something useful by using, again, the convert entities. And I could now create this into injector pins. Now, what I now have done is I've inserted my core that has injector pins, and what I will get now is injector pins that is also through the block underneath it, what means that when somebody calls you and have a change, because have you ever designed anything and there's not a change? I have not. Just going to do it for a few of them here. What I now have is I have a scenario where I now have all my injector holes through the plate. the clearance hole through the plate. And if I turn my cavity back on, you will see that these injector pin holes goes all the way through the part. And the beauty about doing it this way with these reference sketches is that now at any point that there's a change to, if somebody calls you up and says we're changing an injector pin hole, guess what? It's going to change through all the different plates if I'm doing this top-down assembly way. So it's a little advanced. It's a little, you know, you can do a lot of different things in here with this here, but it's good to know, right, that you can actually do that. And last thing I just also wanted to show in here that maybe you don't use already is design libraries, also waterlines. You can actually add those in there. So if I just create a plane halfway through this part here, and I sketch a waterline on that, not a realistic waterline, but just something like a line that goes through here to here, then you could actually use design library features for that too. Check this out. If I grab a waterline feature over here in my design library and I drag it over on a face, I actually, in this case here, I have connectors, I got holes only, I got O-rings. So if I selected a hole only, and all it looks for is that intersection right there, and just like that, bang, I have put a waterline that goes across to there. Now if I do it again on the other side, and I maybe select, I want a connector on this one, select that other intersecting hole, check this out, now we have actually created a waterline that connects, right? If I go in here and I select cutting through here, you will actually see that these do connect even with the drill points in here. And again, what the beauty about this is, not only do I put waterlines inside my parts very quickly, but of course it is all associated. So if we decide to change this sketch here and actually apply a dimension on it, well, now everything updates according to that too. So if I make this 75 and actually move this, well, guess what? Everything is still updating in here. So that's kind of like what I call more like the advanced way to kind of like make these molds, that where if there is a change, you don't have to go through and do every single one. So that's kind of like top-down assembly. And this is a way that you can really very quickly be confident that you are creating your molds, your mold bases, and things updates as you're going through there. So a lot of different information. I hope it was useful. And if you look here, you will see that we got, you know, the design library. I'll send that to you if you email me. Again, my email is lars@catdimensions.com. So that's definitely, you know, one of the things that you want to. I can send you the video for this. I will send you the parts if you want that too. All right. Thank you so much for listening to me. I want to make sure that I stop at an hour. So we at Cat Dimensions really appreciate that you guys are here and are following us and are using these things we're doing. We're really appreciative of that. And we're really trying to reach out to you in a lot of different ways, the best we can come up with. I showed you the YouTube videos that you can always search out on there on our Cat Dimensions library out here. There's over 100 videos now. There will be 102 in a few minutes. And if you ever go to our website, catdimensions.com, there's a lot of information out there. We actually also, you know, if you click over here, if you are on Facebook, we are on Facebook. You get a pretty picture of the awesome, good-looking crew here at Cat Dimensions. Very handsome people. And a lot of information in here, including tips and tricks and things like that. And you will find, you know, the friends. You can connect with me personally or some of the other Cat Dimensions people if you want to. Definitely more than welcome to do that. But what I wanted to do was I wanted to make sure that somebody gets a chance to get some fresh coffee for a week or so. The task for this week is to go to our website, catdimensions.com, and on the front page here, you should be able to tell me where the next available class, what that is in Albany. What is the class that is in Albany? So if you go there, go to catdimensions.com, find out what the next class is. It's right there on the website. Send the answer to marketing@CAT-Dimensions. That's also where you can put your comments, and you can put, you know, if you want to be subscribe for newsletter if you don't already, and things like that. Send that there. The first one who sends that, I will make sure that you get a gift card for Dunkin' Donuts, or if you prefer Tim Hortons or Starbucks, you can do that too, and maybe a CAT-Dimensions coffee mug and stuff like that. So again, really appreciate you guys taking the time to join us here today. I hope this was useful. Any comments you have, please email me at lars@catdimensions.com. Again, really hope you found this was useful. There's a lot of content. Went from beginner to I think more kind of like advanced. So really appreciate it, guys. Thank you so much. You guys are awesome. Have a fantastic day. And I should say too, any questions, I'll take them here too. I can see there's a few in here, so I'll at least one here. I'll check that one out. I think that was maybe an earlier one about what we are doing. Well, today was mold tools if you missed it. So all right. Any other questions? You know, again, we really appreciate it. Again, let's show the slide that has the, go to catdimensions.com for some free coffee. Tell me what the next class in our Albany office is. And really appreciate it, guys. Thank you so much.